Is there a particular sector within the defense sector or budget now that you see as like the biggest growth opportunity?
Yeah. So those stocks that I've been making the most hay with recently are all AI and like drones, and they're very connected. And so I've been talking about them a lot. And so I can tell you, like, in a lot of people with AI, one of the big stocks people talk about is C3 AI. And I invested in that stock. I got people into that stock last August for like less than $15 a share. It was still kind of AI hadn't hit as a trend yet, and what they were doing is preventative maintenance. So they would, like, especially with the Air Force, they could predict when a certain subsystem would fail and have those parts ready to either replace them before they fail or know what's coming up, and they could have better fleet readiness. And so that's how I found them. They also do a lot of other similar kind of stuff just with AI. They have big partners like Google and I think Amazon. So they have major partnerships with this stuff. But that stock's also been hugely volatile for just that reason. I sold it first a couple months ago for like 130% gain. And then I sat here on this podcast with Luke Burgess, and I said, if it falls back down to 20, I'm buying back in. And it did. It went back down to 17.50. We bought back in. Earlier this week, it was up over $40 per share. So we were on, like, we were sitting on like 160% gain. It's down today and this week, the latter half of this week, because it reported earnings and it didn't, like, blow anyone's mind. Earnings went up, revenue went up, earnings per share went up. But people's expectations now for this technology are so high that the market got ahead of itself, so it sank back down.
Well, we had NVIDIA come out and say, oh, like, just become a $1 trillion company, and they're like, raised their sales projections like up 60%. So that was a few days prior. So I think people
that's
are like,
exactly what happened.
Here's another AI play.
Yes.
I want this to do the same thing.
And that's the thing. Yeah, people are getting really gully with it. And so, like I said, we're still up on that stock. Obviously, I think it's just now in like the 30s. So I'm still sitting on like a double, and over the course of a month. But I always tell people, I'm like, buy it under 25. Don't get it now. Don't get it over 30. I don't know if it's going to drop down to 17.50 again, which is why I didn't sell it for the game, because I looked at it and I'm looking at it's over $40 per share. I'm like, I don't know if this stock's going to see $17 again in the short term. So might as well just hold it now and see if we can do better, because I started cashed in 130% on it once. Like you could just keep going back to the bank on that, but I'd rather see what the company does from here and where the growth is. But because that's, like I said, what they're doing for the Air Force, they can apply that to other branches of the military. You can do the same thing with tanks. You can apply AI to kind of so many things in terms of optimizing your manpower and like where to deploy troops and how to deploy them, and kind of like how are you being effective with what equipment, what kind of results are you getting. And so a company similar to that is Palantir. That's a company I've been talking about for a long time. It's up 90%. Or maybe even fully doubled in the past month, because they just turned in their second quarter of profitability, which was a huge step for them. In the first quarter of this year was the first year they reported a net profit. A lot of people were like, because you do get these companies, they sound good, the products sound fun, the technology, it's all promises, but they never turn profitable.
Right.
Palantir turned profitable this year, and then it stacked a second quarter on top of that, and then they gave their outlook for this year, which was better than they expected. They too pivoted even harder into AI. And so Palantir has always been interesting to me. That's one I found because, they would do a lot of stuff for the government. They work with the Department of Homeland Security to track illegal immigrants. They work with Customs Border Patrol. They work with the FBI. They allegedly helped find Osama bin Laden before it went public. It was founded by Peter Thiel. But they've been huge. They've been having a ton of success in Ukraine. This is what really got that company kind of back in the conversation, is because the work they're doing in Ukraine with AI, and basically they're collecting all this satellite data and synthesizing it together to give Ukrainian soldiers real time, imaging of Russian positions and letting them target right there on a tablet, and even deploy munitions right there basically on a tablet. They're basically dialing up drone strikes on on an iPad.
And who's paying for that?
Well, we are.
Exactly.
And that spending's outside of the defense budget.
That's a separate thing.
That's a whole separate thing. All those billions of dollars we've been sending to Ukraine, I've lost track of how much. I had a counter on how much we were sending. I think I stopped counting after we got over like $30 billion in aid over there. But that was very successful. And but one of the things about secret stock files, right, it's that this is all great military technology, but can you commercialize it? Because that's where you really become something. You can be a niche military supplier, and you can eke out a good living for yourself like that. But one of the questions about Palantir specifically was always okay, you guys have all these government contracts, but can you get into the commercial space? And now you're seeing AI get there too. And so with Palantir in particular, they just signed a deal with a fashion company, a fashion retailer called CNA Modus. They're based in Brazil, and they're basically using the same technology that is being used, in war fighting in Ukraine. They're using it to track their inventory and find out what's selling the most, what's not selling, and then proactively get inventory into the stores because they know what's actually working and what's not, and they're using that to adjust their business models. And you're going to see more of that in the real world in terms of using the technology to draw actionable insights from information. And that's always been Palantir's bag. It's always been everybody's got information. The government agencies collect volumes and volumes and volumes of information. Even advertisers, retailers, they all have this information. They're all, tracking your phone stuff. They all have cookies on their web browser. They have all this information. What are you going to do with it, though? This, but what's there? How are you going to respond to it? How are you going to use it to increase your profitability? And now with these AI models, you're able to do that. You're able to punch that data in and go, what can you tell me about this? What does the data really say here? And then you can actually increase your profitability or kill a Russian tank battalion. You can do either.